Gasper, your thoughts on the offensive line last night?
Oh, it was obviously, horrific when you're looking at it. I mean, 33 total dropbacks and you're pressured on 15 of them. It's awful. But I think we're not putting enough blame, and I applaud Mazz for this. I saw the show email. I don't think people are putting enough blame on Eliot Wolf. They're putting the blame on the players. They put the blame on Mayo. They put it on AVP. They put it on Scott Peters. They don't have enough NFL caliber starting offensive linemen. And you're looking at what's going on the left side here. And Eliot Wolf's attitude here was sort of, we'll bring in a core four and we'll draft Caden Wallace in the third round, even though he was a right tackle at Penn State, not a left tackle. And, we'll just rummage through this junk drawer of offensive linemen and we'll pull out a left tackle. And that's obviously not happening. And I thought you saw a direct juxtaposition last night between approaches, because the Jets, and yes, I understand they have Aaron Rodgers, but in the offseason, they knew their offensive line was terrible last year, and they tried to address it. They brought in Tyron Smith to play left tackle, even though they went out and drafted Olu Fashanu with the 11th overall pick, who played left tackle at Penn State, which is the reason Caden Wallace didn't play it. They signed John Simpson from Baltimore, a guard. They gave him a 2-year, $18 million deal, and they traded for a right tackle in Morgan Moses. They went out there and addressed it, and going into that game, Pro Football Focus had them with the 6th best offensive line in the NFL, and the Patriots with the 32nd NFL offensive line out of 32 teams. And boy, did that play out that way. So I think if you want to point the finger for this thing, for how untenable this is, and the fact that they have an offensive line that doesn't even give the quarterback a chance, regardless of who the quarterback is, I think you have to start with Eliot Wolf.
Chris, how do you think the offensive line looked in terms of coaching last night?
I mean, it's hard to gauge. I mean, I'd say not great, but here's the thing about it is it's hard for me to gauge what the coach is capable of doing when I don't know if the player's an NFL player. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I could give, if I give Bill Belichick somebody that is a Division III college football player and ask them to put that guy out there in the NFL, like, there's not much you can do. Like, I don't think Scott Peters is telling Caden Wallace to hold or to not line up correctly. Like, the reality is a lot of the guys that they have, Michael Jordan was out there until he got hurt. I mean, that's a guy that was like out there for anybody to grab and was on their practice squad. They're scraping the bottom of the barrel for guys. And I don't know how good an offensive line coach Scott Peters is, but I also know I can't put all the blame on him for what I'm seeing here when I'm seeing guys that I don't think can play their positions at the NFL level, then not be able to perform at the NFL level and get exposed.
So again, arrogant of the Patriots and Eliot Wolf to think they can take guys on the right and put them on the left, or something Chris pointed out a lot in the offseason, that no, our problems last year were actually just the dysfunction between Belichick and Mac Jones. And once we lop that off, the rest of the team is actually okay. And that was, well, Chris, you said that was their attitude in the offseason, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's all the people that they re-signed. And look, they re-signed Uwenu. They were even kind of stubborn, I thought, in training camp with moving him to right tackle, which I thought should have happened sooner, to be honest with you. But they were like, no, he's going to play guard. He's going to play guard, all that. And they obviously, thank God for him at right tackle. But I just think their whole approach to this was wrong. It was sort of this idea of we can just throw a bunch of stuff against the wall and something will stick, and we'll just be able to pull linemen out of this. I just don't think that there was enough urgency here in terms of trying to address their issues on the offensive line. I really don't. And then also you have the issue of you completely misidentified a core four, both in his ability from a football standpoint to play on the left side, and both in terms of his makeup. What kind of makeup do you have? When you have a guy that basically quits on you 2 games into the season, that means you didn't do a good enough job of homework on that player and what his makeup is. That's a huge whiff. Forget the fact that the guy can't play left tackle. It's the fact that you identified him as somebody you wanted on your rebuilding team when you're trying to reset the culture, and he bailed on you after 2 games. That's really bad.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, Chris, it's bad.
And it's not just like he was the flyer. We'll see if he works out, but we've got insurance. No, he was the guy.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
No, they put stock in him.
They did. Sorry, Jim. Go ahead.
Chris, I called it arrogant earlier. It's just like, we'll square peg round hole it. It'll work out fine, and it clearly hasn't. And it's blown up in his face, and rightfully so.
Yeah, I mean, it really has. And I know like some people say, well, what was out there? I mean, Jonah Williams was out there. I know he's hurt at this point, but I just think there was too much wishing and hoping here and projecting. And do I think that this was ultimately, Eliot Wolf's master plan? I don't. I think he had other plans. I think they wanted to get a tackle higher up in the draft. I think Kingsley Suamataia, who ended up going to Kansas City, is someone they would have been interested in. So there are some things that fell through on him. But that being the case, you have to be able to come up with a viable, and that's the key word, viable plan B, C, D. And what he's handing to Peters and Mayo and Alex Van Pelt is just not viable. It is not viable. And yeah, there's some injuries. Obviously, Vidarian Lowe is banged up there, and we see that. But it is completely not viable what they're putting out there and what they're asking the quarterback to deal with and what they're asking the coaches to deal with.
Chris, Vidarian Lowe's not viable either. We know that. And I'm not picking on you. And the only reason I asked you about the coaching is because I think they're having communication problems up there to boot. Like, they can't even figure out who to block, let alone have the guys to do it.
Sure, but part of that's recognition, Mazz. It's like the coaches can tell you, in this situation, this is what you do. But if you don't recognize the situation live in real speed, like, they can't be out there holding your hand, and they can't be in your helmet telling you, this is the situation we talked about, block this guy. I think part of it is that the younger players can't recognize, they know what to do, like on the, the iPad or whatever, when they have to write it down on paper. But when it's happening in the game, they don't see it. They're not sure what it is, and they can't pick it up.
If you like that clip, check out more videos from Felger and Mazz here. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.